Hell, sorry. I'm in dire need of a haircut, I see. That's really why I do these videos, to do a hair check from time to time. God Lord. Okay. Come on. Couple updates here. Couple updates. I should probably do these more often, but I know sometimes you all get overwhelmed. You got plenty to deal with already. But one, in our coverage of presidential power, I do want to highlight the fact that if you look at Trump 1.0, first time around, right, his ability to work with Congress was terrible, quite honestly. Right, he had an anemic legislative agenda, partly because Republicans had narrow majorities in both houses for 2 years, right, and then lost control of the House in years 3 and 4. So years 3 and 4, right, nothing got done via sort of Trump's work with Congress. But he did get, what was it, in his first term, he did get major tax cuts enacted. That goes, to his credit as a legislative leader. And then a mostly symbolic criminal justice reform law. It was a good law, kind of had bipartisan support, yay. But pretty symbolic because most prisoners are not federal prisoners. Most prisoners are state prisoners, overwhelmingly. So even if you sort of exonerate those who have been serving long prison terms for nonviolent drug offenses, mostly marijuana possession, it's a good thing, but it doesn't achieve much in terms of broader criminal justice reform. That's got to come from the states. So that's pretty much it, really, other than the standard budget bills that every president has to get done for the government to function like it's not right now. Those are generally gimmies, although apparently not anymore. That does show you, though, right, that Trump struggled with the same exact issue with budget bills in Trump 1.0. The previous longest government shutdown was under Trump 1.0, and now the longest one is under Trump 2.0. Right? Trump really hasn't engaged with Congress on this. He's mostly just left it up to congressional Republicans to figure it out. Very disengaged, very focused on other things like his ballroom, and he remarbled the Lincoln bedroom's bathroom. He's very excited to talk about that. He's been traveling abroad, Asia and the Middle East and so forth. A little bit checked out for a government shutdown. That's a little bit unusual. So he continues to struggle with that a bit, right? Trump generally doesn't play well with others. I think he's pretty clear about that. Trump is, the former CEO of the Trump Organization, in which he had largely unilateral power. That's his comfort zone. So working with Congress has never been his forte. But we would say, I think, Trump 2.0, he has shown flashes of being better this time around at working with Congress. Not because of his popularity, because that ain't there. We talked about that. A president who is popular with we the people has more leverage with Congress. Congress will take more seriously and listen more to a popular president because they're always looking ahead to the next election cycle. How can they get reelected? So an unpopular Donald Trump, that has not been why he's been somewhat successful with Congress in Trump 2.0. His approval ratings now are right around 40%. I've seen slightly higher numbers, but only slightly higher. And to be that low at the beginning of your second term is fairly ridiculous and unprecedented. Trump, W. Bush in the second term probably comes close to that. But Trump, W. Bush second term, he had a terrible second term. Just atrocious. That's a different story for a different day and probably a different class. Trump 2.0, right? He has a strong grip on the Republican Party, right? Because he has so much support among we the people, among the Republican we the people, the MAGA base, right? Which is most of the Republican Party. That gives him tremendous leverage over Republican members of Congress, even if he's not popular, because he's popular with that key constituency, right? What Trump has shown repeatedly and impressively is that if Republicans in Congress defy him, he can recruit other Republicans to run against them in their next cycle in primaries. And a number of them who've defied Trump have been defeated in Republican Party primaries so that they can't get reelected. So his core level of support among Republicans at the grassroots level and his repeated willingness and ability to chase recalcitrant Republicans who don't support him out of the party, which he's done repeatedly and impressively, that's given him some real leverage with Congress as long as Republicans control both houses. So he got that big, beautiful bill passed right a while back, and that didn't look like it was going to happen, honestly. He called individual Republicans and threatened them, much like LBJ used to do back in the day. And he got just enough Republicans on board to get it done. That's a major bill. Now look, like with any other president and legislation passed under any other president, we could talk endlessly about, was that a good bill? Was that a bad bill? Blah, blah, blah. You know, for political scientists, at some level, we don't care about that debate. I mean, we care about it, but, right, what we think about when we think about the ability of a president to be a legislative leader, we're really just looking at the ability of a president to get legislation through Congress and signed into law without, setting aside normative questions of is it good or bad. See, that doesn't really go anywhere. If you're a Republican, you think that was a beautiful bill and big. If you're a Democrat, you think it was terrible. Well, that's predictable, right? Same thing under Biden in his first 2 years. Ton of stuff he got through Congress. If you're a Democrat, you say, oh, that was fabulous legislation. If you're a Republican, you say it all sucked. So that debate doesn't go anywhere from a political science standpoint. What we care about is production. And Trump has shown an ability this time around, more so than the first time around, to leverage influence with Congress through his grip on the Republican Party, even though he's unpopular. Now look, he's been AWOL on the budget, on the shutdown of the federal government. He's starting to get more involved. And as a result, I think things are starting to happen. Republicans took a beating on Tuesday in that off-year election cycle. And Trump said, hey, we took a beating. get this fixed. And until Trump gets a little more involved, I don't think we're going to have an end to the shutdown. So I think those election results on Tuesday focused Trump a bit and will focus Republicans in Congress. They realize they've got a bit of a problem here. And this shutdown seems to be hurting them more than it's hurting Democrats. So I wanted to update that because I think some of the slides I have on presidential power focus on Trump 1.0 without taking into account Trump 2.0. The dynamics this time around are a little different. A lot of it still remains to be seen. And Trump has about another year and a few months. After that, I think it's pretty likely Democrats retake the House in the midterms, and then his ability to get things done with Congress disappears, like it did with Trump 1.0. Yeah, the election results this past Tuesday. Wow. Now look, these were mostly off-year elections in blue states like Virginia and New Jersey. Although there were also off-year elections in Georgia where Democrats did super well. Mississippi, where Democrats did well. Pennsylvania, swing state, where Democrats did well. Pretty much across the board, right? Democrats killed it. They didn't just win, they won by large margins, bigger than predicted. They outperformed the polls by quite a bit. Yeah, right. And so that's at some level normal, because we know that the party that holds the White House gets punished at the midterms, or in this case, an off-year election. That's structural, built in, a long history of that, completely normal. That Republicans took a hit, but they took a bigger hit than you would have expected, right? And that begins to telegraph potential trouble down the road in the midterms in a year. especially in the House of Representatives, where it looks increasingly likely, although we'll see, of course, that Democrats will likely retake the House. If the results from Tuesday hold at all a year from today, Democrats are going to sail to a pretty good grip on the House for Trump's last 2 years. So those election results are sort of moving the needle on Capitol Hill regarding the government shutdown. Republicans realize that although they thought they were going to win this battle with Democrats easily, it hasn't worked out that way. It's gotten a little muddy, a little more challenging for them. And the election results on Tuesday have made it even worse for them. And so I think they're coming to the table, I believe, today. And they're making some concessions to Democrats in the Senate, where the problem has been because of the filibuster. And it looks like they might actually get a partial lifting of the shutdown. Looks like they might get that moving today. We'll see. Although then, right, it has to go to the House. And that presents its own calculus and difficulties. And we'll see where that goes. So it'll be a little while yet, even for the partial lifting of the shutdown. Okay. The only other thing I guess I would update here is the Supreme Court heard oral arguments earlier this week on some of Trump's tariffs, especially the ones that were just put on pretty much everybody across the globe, all countries, at shockingly high levels, although the levels have bounced around quite a bit. Trump invoked a federal law enacted in 1977 to justify his unilateral approach to tariff policy. Ironically, that 1977 law was a response by Congress to Nixon being unilateral and autocratic. So the intent of that law was to limit presidential power to unilaterally enact tariff policy, among other things. So sort of weird that Trump's using it to justify a unilateral grab of the tariff power, claiming somewhat nebulously all sorts of emergencies. And the court, right? The court, if you heard about this at all in the news, the court looked at this very skeptically, including 3 Republicans who were super unimpressed with the Trump administration's arguments in that case for unilateral executive power in an area clearly delegated to Congress in Article 1 language and bolstered by the 1977 law. So I think, I'll be blunt here. I do think you got indications that 3 of the Republicans on the high court, they'll rubber stamp anything Trump does. I call them the 3 bootlickers. You got Clarence Thomas, Samuel Alito, and Brett Kavanaugh. They would never check and balance any of Trump's exercises of power. They're all in on MAGA. That's cool. Sign of the times. It's where we're at these days. So you got the 3 bootlickers, but you also have, 3 Republicans who are, I think, a bit more principled, a bit more concerned about fidelity to the rule of law and the Constitution. And so you've got Chief Justice John Roberts, Amy Barrett Coney, and Neil Gorsuch. 2 of them put there by Trump, Gorsuch and Amy Coney Barrett. They seemed endlessly skeptical of the Trump administration's claims. Now look, assuming the court, and I think it's pretty likely, strikes down these particular tariffs enacted under that 1977 law by Trump, that'll still leave in place a fair number of his tariffs. It would still leave open other avenues to Trump enacting some tariffs at least, but probably more targeted and more limited. Because Congress has delegated clearly to the president certain tariff powers in a limited way in other legislation. Congress can delegate some of their powers to the president, but not too much. The court did also talk about that the other day, including Justice Neil Gorsuch. He did say, look, to the extent that tariffs are a tax on we the people, the consumers, this is in some ways the president exercising the taxing power. And Congress has the taxing power, obviously. If you read Article 1, Section 8, you'll see that Congress is given the taxing power. And Congress cannot delegate that to the president, even if they want to. Even if they want to. And you did hear Speaker Johnson yesterday, I think it was yesterday, saying whatever the president wants, the president gets. The president can do whatever he wants. On the matter of war, tariff policy, anything he does, I support. Right? And the court's going, come on, Johnson, man up a little bit. Grow a spine. Protect the powers of Congress. Yeah, you're under the sway of MAGA. You're sort of bought and paid for by Donald Trump. But man, you have a larger obligation to protect legislative powers. Okay, even if you like the president or adore the president, you still need to stand up a little bit for your own institution's powers, because that's what the Constitution requires, and it's often what federal law requires. We are living in crazy times, people. I can't even with some of this. All right, take care. Catch you on the flippity flip.